Hi everyone, I am C. Surbi Punshi, Indirect Tax Expert at ClearTax, and today we are here to understand about the applicability of this e-invoicing, which is especially starting from 1st April 2022 for the businesses with turnover more than 20 crore. But before we even start our today's session, I just want to see if you all are able to hear us or not. So if you are able to hear us, just say hi on the chat box. Perfect. So it seems like everyone is able to hear us. So with this, we'll just start our today's session. So first, we'll just welcome CA Shefali Girdewalji. She's an author, trainer, and renowned YouTuber on GST. She's a visiting faculty and speaker at the ICI. She has conducted more than 200 seminars across India, and we all know Shefali. So I think even this introduction was not needed. But yeah, we welcome Shefali.
Thanks, Sylvia.
So now we are going to actually start our today's session, which is especially on this e-invoicing. And we all know that there's an impact of the invoicing on the different businesses, especially who are coming within the category of 20 crore to 50 crore. Because for businesses whose turnover was more than 50 crore, the invoicing was already applicable. But now this limit has been reduced to 20 crore. So now this is going to applicable from 1st April 2022. So the government, they come up with a notification on 24th Feb where they have reduced this limit and now they're talking about this 20 crore ka limit. So maybe just to understand all this, right? So I would like to understand from Shefali ji if you can just tell or maybe just decode this latest e-invoicing notification. I think that will be great for our audience.
Yeah. First of all, I would like to thank Surbi and entire ClearText team for organizing this particular webinar. This is very important topic at this point of time. It's very relevant. So, the provision initiated like almost 2 years back when government came up with the idea of e-invoicing. So, first of all, I would like to make it clear that e-invoicing doesn't mean that we will have to raise invoices, raise them in the normal manner, doing it like using. But for each and every invoice there will be a track with the government, and how they will track it, because we are going to enter the information of each and every invoice on the prescribed portal, that will be the government portal. So with this provision there are so many inherent issues, inherent problems, and I can inherent see the incidents which we need to connect with the provision itself, so it will not throw a light on everything, but we will have to understand with in connoissance with the other provisions of GST. So from 1st April 2022, it will be applicable on the businesses where the turnover is up to more than 20 crore. This is 20 to 50 crore. So on above 50 crore, it was already applicable. There are some important things we need to take care. If you will see our webinar, which was around 1 year back when it was made applicable on 100 crore or 50 crore, maybe I don't remember the exact date or time, but yes, in that webinar also, I had a concern about thing that the way government is, moving in this regard, like reducing the required turnover day by day. One day, able to the people having turnover of more than 5 crore rupees, because there is something like a slab in GST for the people who are having the turnover of less than 5 crore, more than 5 crore. But we need to understand about the infrastructure. So for turnover, sometimes it may be hard for the businesses to have a perfect infrastructure for e-invoicing type of things, because it's not very easy. Sometimes what happens, there can be variety of businesses, right? Sometimes there may be a business which is having a 20 crore turnover, which is like, I won't say it's too much, but yes, their number of invoices is too high. Like sometimes they are small invoices, the volume is high, but the amount per invoice is very less. Right. So in that case, what will
Shefali,
happen?
sorry,
Yes.
I guess your voice actually is breaking in between. I know, so
Okay.
our users are just saying that there is some network problem.
1 second. Is it any better now?
Yeah, it's perfectly okay now.
Okay.
So,
So
like, if you
for
can
the
just repeat some part, yeah, because I think people were just saying if you can just repeat that first part, like
okay,
applicability
okay,
part,
okay,
maybe that's
okay, okay.
thank you.
So for the businesses having a turnover of more than 20 crore rupees, now it will be made applicable. So what I was saying, Surbi, that sometimes it may happen that your turnover is 20 crore rupees, but the volume of invoices is so high that it will be almost impossible for you to do it manually. So for that matter, because see, when I say e-invoicing is the part of invoicing, invoicing itself is very, very, very important part for any business. And now with the changed provisions of GST, when we understand that any fault on the supplier, can impact the input tax credit of buyer directly. So I will say invoicing is very important. And what happens if you raised an invoice but you forgot to e-invoice it? What will happen? It will not be a complete invoice as per the GST provisions, so it will be equal to not raising any invoice. So if you have a physical invoice or any electronic invoice, but it is not e-invoiced, it means it is equal to not raising an invoice at all. So I mean there is an inherent risk in this entire provision for every business who is like falling under the category of its applicability. So from that perspective, I will say this is at this point of time it is one of the most important provision which is required to be followed by the businesses. So 20, if your turnover is more than 20 crore rupees in any previous year, like since the beginning of GST until now, in any financial year, it will be applicable to you. And what does it mean? It means for every B2B invoice. So it is not applicable to the B2C invoices. For every B2B invoice, you just need to enter the detail of invoice on the GSTN portal, and then you need to generate an e-invoice. And what should be the timing? Now, another important thing is what should be the timing? Like, what is the last time? What is the last date for raising an e-invoice? So we need to understand that once you enter the details on the portal and issue that ARN or whatever, at that time your invoicing will be complete, right? And for raising a complete invoice, the time limit in case of goods is when the movement of goods starts, that is before or up to the movement of goods for the purpose of supply. So for e-invoice also we will have to raise it before or up to the movement of goods in the case of goods, and in the case of services the provisioning of services, but 30 days time limit is given for the purpose of services. So that will be the last time for the issuance of invoice.
Thank you, Shefali ji. And I think most of the people are now really clear with the applicability part. And as Shefali ji said, right, like this e-invoicing is now applicable for the businesses whose turnover is more than 20 crore. And this is applicable from 1st April 2022. And whenever we just talk about turnover, because they have used the word aggregate turnover, so that aggregate turnover we have to check in any of the preceding financial year, which is starting from 17-18 till year 21-22. So if in any of this financial year, right, if your turnover exceeds the limit of 20 crore, in that particular case this e-invoicing is applicable to you, though there are certain exceptions also, like if we just talk about GTAs and all, or maybe if we just talk about the cinematographic films and all, so there this e-invoicing is not applicable, so they have excluded them. But in general, if you ask, wherever your aggregate turnover exceed 20 crore, in such cases this e-invoicing is applicable. And I can also see there is a question from Ajit. So he's asking whether it is at PAN based or GSTN based. So maybe just to answer Ajit, so this is always at a PAN based. So we always have to look at the aggregate turnover at a PAN based. Now, maybe I would like to understand from Shifali ji, like because we know that now this is applicable. So, what is the business impact of e-invoicing for those whose turnover is more than 20 crore? Like, what exactly they have to do and how they are going to get impacted because of this?
First of all, there will be extra cost because, as I told you earlier, it will not be easy for every business because sometimes the volume of invoices can be very high, and even if volume is low, it's not very easy to each and every time to ensure that thing that for every each and every invoice the e-invoicing is done. So they will have some extra cost. They can do it manually, but it will be better if they use some good software because in manual you understand that there are chances of clerical error. Sometimes the information may got the wrong information get entered. And in e-invoicing, there is one thing that you cannot correct it after that. Like if there is some wrong information, there is a lot of confusion. If the original invoice was less or more because of the amount in the original invoice was less or more because of some say some reasons for which you can raise a credit note or debit note, then it's okay. because we also need to generate e-invoice for credit note or debit note, right? But if there is some other mistake and you entered it wrongly, so it will be very difficult for you to correct those information, right? Because I will say that there are very limited things available in the e-invoicing portal. So we should take care of this thing, that once the invoice is entered or the data which is going to the e-invoicing portal should be correct. So it should be timely first of all. Then the second thing is it should be in the correct form and manner, because for many businesses, we can leave the example of some businesses where the invoice volume, say the invoice amount is too high. But for the other businesses, for specifically the like manufacturing sector, like for the trading sector, it's very high volume of invoices. So like every time, sometimes it may be in the night, because if you will see in the factories or in the manufacturing sector, what happens, the dispatch of trucks, generally it may be in the night or day or any time, right? So sometimes it's like a 24/7 thing. So the dispatch of goods or material is like a 24/7 thing. So each and every time you're dispatching the goods, you need to make sure that the compliance of invoicing and e-invoicing are done. So I will say that manually it will be very difficult for any business, and it will be expensive also. It's not just about difficult or the prone to error thing, but it will be expensive also, because you know you will have to have some qualified person for this job, so not everyone can do it. Then they should be aware of the portal, like what data is required to be entered, and to make sure that okay, the data entered is correct. Then there should be a senior person to verify it, like whatever data is entered by the various juniors is perfect, right? So for that matter, I will say it's better to use software, so it's not only cheap, but it will also ensure that there is the correct entry of the data and timely also. Because there can be different options with you. Sometimes whatever invoices you are raising from your software can be directly pushed to the government portal for the purpose of e-invoicing. Okay, now apart from that, the other important thing is, see, government is synchronizing everything. It is good for the government, it is good for the taxpayers also, but it's risky also, right? Because now government is synchronizing everything. So e-bill is there, invoicing is there, e-invoicing is there. There was a practice in the past that if there is some kind of issue, or some mistakes or some errors, people were used to change the invoices in the back date government on the invoices which are issued. Recipient buyer, in future if they will say that okay, if there is an invoice of say 1 lakh rupees, it's very common business practice, and after the receipt of goods or services or whatever, or after the ones, or at the time when you are asking for the payment, so sometimes the buyer says that no, not 1 lakh rupees, I will pay only 10,000 rupees. So generally businesses were used to change the invoices in the back date. So what they will do, they will open the GSTR and they will amend it in the back date, right? So to control all of these kind of practices, now everything is traceable from the side of government. You raised invoice, you had an e-invoice, then there was an e-way bill. So e-way bill will ensure that the movement of goods actually happened. Then e-invoicing will ensure that the proper invoice for the e-way bill was also raised, because till now there was no such kind of synchronization with the government, that for every e-way bill there is a corresponding invoice. For that matter, either they will have to do the audit of that particular taxpayer, and doing the audit of each and every taxpayer is not possible for the government. They don't have that much of machinery in their department, or the qualified people who can do that audit work, and it's obviously very expensive task, right? So now they're just synchronizing everything. So EV bill is there, then the corresponding invoice is there. The government is using AI in everything. So now it is quite easy for them to do the entire audit thing. How they can just see the entire data of invoices, the e-invoices entered by the supplier, then the e-way bills for the particularly for the goods. So for the services, it will not be possible, but for the goods, they can match the e-way bills with the e-invoices. And if they find any discrepancy, so for their AI system, it will be like a thing of minutes, to generate the discrepancies and send the notices to the people. So for the businesses, they need to understand this thing, that in earlier regime, which was very manual types of, right, there was scope of many errors. So there were many errors, but they were settled somehow. But now on, it will not be possible. So we just need to understand that risk. So I will say, just sum up with the two things. So two important things are there. First of all, you will have to change your standard operating procedures in your factory gate, or if you are a service provider, in your accounts department. So there should not be any dispatch unless and until there is an e-invoicing for something. And the second important thing is just, placing the entire system and understanding the risk which can accrue because of the invoicing provision and synchronization.
Thank you, Shefali ji. So with this, like if we just understand, right? So as Shefali ji mentioned, that they are the two important part which we should understand. The first one is like look after your standard of procedure, like how the things are working at the factory gate, like when actually you generate the invoice, when you are getting the item number, when you generate the e-way bill. So that is something you should always look after. So that's one of the important part. Other than that, you also have to start looking into the impact of the different thing, or just especially because whenever we just say that, I could also see the questions which is raised by different viewers. So it's like what happens, let's say if you today generate the item number, but later you realize that you have made mistake while you were generating the item number, or the details you have mentioned or you have uploaded while you were generating item was wrong. Sometimes it happens, right, that the taxable value you were punching, let's say 10,000, but by mistake you have made it as 1,000 rupees. Right, so in such cases there is no provision to cancel that invoice, so you cannot cancel that IRA number only after like after 24 hours. So you can always cancel it if the time period is up to 24 hours. So if you have made such mistakes, you can always cancel the IRA number within 24 hours, but after that you cannot do that. So if you realize your mistake after 24 hours, then the only alternative you have with you is like you can always raise a corresponding credit note just to nullify the transaction. So that is how you can always look into that. But important part which we should understand is, let's say if you have one invoice with you, you created the item number also, and once you have created item number, assume that you also have generated the eBay bill, right? Now you realize your mistake, no, there was some mistake over there and I had to correct it. Right, now if you want to even cancel the item number, the important part is first you have to go and cancel your eBay bill number. Once your e-way bill is cancelled, then only you can cancel your IRA number. And also at the same time, you also have to look into the time limit, like whether 24 hours are lapsed or it is not lapsed. Because if it is lapsed, you can't do anything. You just have to raise a corresponding credit note to nullify the transaction. So these are something which we all should understand, that what would be our procedure. There should be a proper training which should be given to your team members and also to the people, not only the finance team who is actually generating the invoice, but also the warehouse person who is actually generating the e-way bill. Because going forward you will see that you will be able to generate the e-way bill in respect of the documents where iron was required only by using that iron number. So you cannot directly go and punch in the information and generate the e-way bill. That will not be even possible. So if you have to generate the e-way bill against the document kind of B2B or export, you have to use that iron number and then generate the e-way bill. Or maybe at the time of generating iron number itself, you can always get the e-way bill also if you put the vehicle details, right? So that is how this all the procedure works. We'll be actually understanding this in detail, and Shefali ji will be actually telling us more about the same. Maybe before that, I would like to take few of the questions which has been posted by our viewers. So Shefali ji, I could see there is one question from Ajit, who is asking, e-invoicing applicable to delivery challan for sending material from one store to another store within the same state?
No, it is not applicable on the delivery channel. It is applicable on invoices only.
So hope Ajit you got your answer. And second question is from Priya, who is asking, can we generate e-invoice in March on trial basis?
Well, I don't know if there is something like trial basis available on the portal. I think Surbi can tell you better if there is some such facility.
Yeah. So, Priya, like there is something called sandbox environment, which is given by the IRPs and all. So you can always use the sandbox environment. Using that, you can always create and generate the invoice on trial basis, but not on the production environment. That is altogether separate. So you cannot use that for generating the test invoices. So, but you can always have the facility called sandbox environment where you can try it out. Other question we can see from Vivek, who is asking, can we cancel e-invoice within 24 hours if there is no e-way bill?
So 24 hours time limit is available to cancel it. So we already mentioned that you have a time limit of 24 hours to cancel it. Even if there is
Another
any available, you can cancel it still.
other question is from Siddhartha, who is asking how many days old invoice can be generated. So means his question is like, I have generated a normal invoice, physical invoice in my ERP, but I have not got the IRA number. So is there a possibility I can get an IRA number maybe after 30 days or maybe after 40 days? So I guess that is the question from Siddharth.
I think it's possible, but see, breach is still breach. I think the portal allows you to enter backdates. Am I right?
Yeah, right.
It allows you, but the provision of the GST, there is a breach of it. So what will be the breach? I will also explain that. It means that for the journal breach, there is a journal penalty. So there is no specific penalty for this particular thing. So in future, if department traces it out, so they can raise a journal penalty on you for this breach basically, which is corrected in the future. So you can take a plea that it was a genuine mistake. But if you're asking like what can be the worst case scenario, the department can send you the notice and they can ask you that okay, there was a breach from your side. That can happen.
Right. And also just to also tell you one important part over here, because we keep on hearing this query, right, that let's say on 1st April I have raised or I have raised a document on my ARP, but can I go ahead and maybe on 30 maybe on 30th April I can just grade the IRA number for all the document which has been created between like 1st April to 30th April. So see, as Shifali ji also mentioned, right? So you can always do that. Like on the portal, it is allowed. But the only problem is that that invoice is not considered as a valid invoice. So today, if you don't have a IRA number on that invoice which you have issued, that is not a valid tax invoice. It is just a piece of paper. So even you cannot generate a e-way bill against the same. So if you try to do that, first obviously government will throw an error if it's a B2B and export document. So that is how you're going to face the problem. And even if the officer, like if they just catch you or caught you in the between, right, so they will like put, or like I say, actually they will put lot of penalties on you. So that's the problem. And not only this, even from the recipient angle, when you issued this
Mhm.
invoice to a recipient, for them also it's not a valid tax invoice for claiming ITC. And we all know that one of the condition for claiming in like the ITC is the possession of a tax invoice. So that since it is not even a valid tax invoice, they can't even claim the ITC. So these are the implications when it comes to creating or getting the IRA number at the same time when you're actually generating the document in your ERP. So I know that there are a lot of questions which have been asked. So maybe I will just take few of them. One person, they are asking, do we also have to generate the IRA against the export document?
Yes, for export document it is required. So for B2C it is not required, but for export document it's required.
Another question is from Amol, who is asking where we are supposed to use this e-invoice, only in GST or in custom or in banks. I would say every.
So it is mandatory as per GST provision, it should be on your invoice. So it's mandatory under the GST provision. For the customs also, it may be required because they will also, if there is some export and the GST is involved. So I think on those documents also you should mention.
So
Ultimately,
thank you.
invoice copy will also be attached there. If you are making an export, invoice copy will be there.
Right. So other questions from Lakshmi, who is asking whether we can amend the e-invoice.
Amendment of e-invoice. So if there is any mistake, you can cancel it and then you can regenerate it. That is possible. I think amendments are not possible in invoicing, right?
So hope like you got like answer of your queries. Like we'll keep on taking more queries, but with that, because now the e-invoicing, it is applicable from 1st April 2022 for the businesses with turnover between like 20 to 50 crore. Like what are the advantage of this e-invoice beyond the compliance? So we know there is a compliance part which is attached to it, but what are the actual advantages of this e-invoice?
See, I will say for any compliance, there are advantages. So whether it is the compliance related to 2A, 2B, or matching of your 3B credit with that, I think they or the vendors data with your own data. So there is benefit for the businesses. The first thing is, if you're doing it perfectly, if you're doing it with the proper discipline perfectly, I think at the end of every month, your turnover will be calculated so precisely. So there will be less chances of skipping of any invoices or any data. So that is the one benefit of it. Plus, your buyers, they will not have to reconcile it again and again. Your buyers will be able to match their input tax credit easily. So you can ensure that the proper amount of input tax credit is flowing into your buyers. So that is another benefit. So obviously the data, any discipline and any compliance, it's hard for us to do it, and it always involves some extra cost. But yes, there is benefit of that thing. Then government will be able to synchronize. So once they will see that okay, the data of your EV bills and the data of e-invoicing is matching, so they will be able to understand that there is no loophole. You will be able to prove it. So it will work as an evidence in your favor in case of any discrepancy on any dispute in the future, right? It will work in your favor. If your truck is moving on the road, right, and your documentation is proper, e-invoicing is there, e-bill is there, so you can just show it to the proper officer who is at the road if they are trying to detain your vehicle. Sometimes that happens, that even if there are some documents with the person who is driving the truck, because generally there is no business person or accounts person. When the goods are moving through a truck, there is only one person, and that is the driver, right? So if that person is having the proper document, because e-invoicing can be checked online by the officer also, although they can check the EV bill also, right? So once they will be able to see that okay, the e-invoicing is there, the EV bill is there, then okay, they have no reasons to stop or detain your truck. So it will provide a strong evidence in your favor. So that is always a benefit.
Thank you, Shefali ji. So with this, we understood about like the advantage part also, like how it is even important for the businesses. What about the challenges? Like because we know that there is advantages, but also there are some issues while we adopt this e-invoicing system. So what are the main issues you think will happen, and where people may face some issues while they are adopting to the e-invoicing?
I think the biggest issue will be the availability of internet, because many factories and many manufacturing units, the big manufacturing units, generally they are located in very remote area, right? Because they need a very huge piece of land, and in that remote area there may not be a proper availability of internet, or if it is available, it may not be 24/7. There are chances, but the dispatch of goods is 24/7. So generally that can pose a problem. That can be a problem. See, we need to understand that okay, internet is very common, you can use it through your sim, but still there are many places in our country where the availability of internet is not that good. First thing, and I can give you an example in the factory areas specifically, where the industrial areas are located, the factory areas are located. So you can say, like in a very huge area, there may be hardly two or three factories. So generally, the internet service providers, they don't have they don't form a complete infrastructure in those areas, because for two or three connection, they are not going to put a complete fiber line in that complete area, like for the kilometers of the area. So that is a very common problem in the industrial areas. Generally, the internet services are not that good. Then second thing is uh, properly qualified staff. That will be another thing, because again I will say this is not something that can be done by anyone. So we need a person who is properly qualified for this thing. Then change in the current procedures, so you will have to change your current procedures. And like for a business of 20 crore rupees, sometimes it may be very expensive for them to afford this entire thing. If you're not going for a software, for this through the software it may be easy, but if I try to do this task through my staff, I think it will be very difficult first to train them, then to ensure it, because it's 24/7. You will have to do the double or triple shifts, and still there are chances of error. And in case of any mistakes, as we know, we cannot edit it, but yes, you will have to cancel it. Then you will have to reissue it again. And I think when we try to reissue it, we cannot use the same invoice number. That is also a problem. So you will have to use some other invoice number. So there are so many challenges. And for a business like 20 crore rupees, sometimes that happens if it's a trading business. I can tell you one thing, for the traders, sometimes their margin is very less. So you can say, oh, yeah, 20 crore is such a huge amount, but it's not like that. 20 crore is turnover. So sometimes, their margin is like 5 or 10%. So that, comes out a very small amount in terms of margin. Then out of that margin, they are making the payment of rent, plus the salary of staff, plus the other expenses, transportation and everything, right? Because transportation is one of the huge costs, right? So they are doing so many expenses. So for them, sometimes it may be very, very expensive. Actually, it may be cutting into their profit to, afford this entire system. So from the side of government, there can be something offline, or there can be something a little easier for them. So there can be something where they could have just entered their entire data of invoices, and when there is availability of internet, they can just push that entire data to the government system instead of, making it one by one. So that is possible through in software, but it is not directly available on the government's portal. Then consequences: if there is any error from the side of taxpayer, the consequences can be high. It completely depends on the person with whom you are dealing in the department. So they can say, let us say, if there is a delay of say 1 month, 2 months, or 5 months, 6 months. So taxpayer was not aware that they are liable to raise the e-invoicing. They were just doing the normal invoicing. The impact can be extremely huge. It can be disastrous because the input tax credit of your buyers, that may be in danger. Plus, they can say that you haven't raised any single correct or complete invoice. So if your volume is high, that can definitely be very dangerous for you. So these are the main consequences from this provision, I would say.
Thank you, Shefali ji. And I could see like, and one of the important part which Shefali ji also mentioned is the training, right? So today, people always keep getting questions, and obviously they are a little confused about even the applicability part, like when this invoicing is even applicable, what are the documents against which we are required to create the ID number, and all of such questions, right? So I could see, and where we have to actually generate the ID number, what are the fields required, what are the mandatory fields, what are the changes we are required to do in the ERPs and all. So these are some of the question, and just to answer a few of this, maybe I would like to ask Shefali ji. So there is one question from Vinu, who is asking that we are an exporter with one or two domestic invoices. So what will be the process of e-invoicing?
See, the process of e-invoicing will not change with this thing that you are doing domestic plus export. The process will be same for everyone. So if you have 100 invoices or you have 2 or 3 invoices, so you can choose at per your convenience. If the number of invoices is very less, you can just manually go to the portal, enter the detail, and generate the IRN, right? If the invoices number is very high, it's like many invoices every day, then you can just use a software wherein I mean, there can be two ways: either the data of every invoice can be pushed to the system automatically, or you can just use some kind of connector or something like that. And so we can tell you better in that case, like what can be the option with you.
So, okay, so there are anyhow, because people just get confused with all this thing, right? So I just want to give one simple liner over here. See, whenever you think about invoicing, right, just divide this into two part over here. Like first thing, always remember that you are looking into your aggregate turnover. So whether your aggregate turnover for any of the preceding financial year from 17, 18 till like 21, 22, is it exceeding this limit of 20 crore or not, right? So that's the first thing which you have to look into it. There also, that when we are saying 20 crore, always look at a PAN level. You don't have to look at a GST level. That's one thing. That also, because people just get confused, okay, do we have to only look into the taxable turnover, or do we also have to look into exempt turnover? What about my exports and all such questions, right? So there also, make sure while you are computing this aggregate turnover, you're looking into taxable as well as the exempt turnover. So you're looking into all of your outward supply. You're not looking into your inward supply, which was liable to RCM, because many times you have to discharge some liability under reverse charge, but that does not mean that becomes your turnover. That's not your sales, right? So you don't have to include inward supplies liable to RCM. You just have to include all of your outward supply. But there can be a case that you have some outward supply, but you are not liable to pay taxes. Rather, the other party is liable to pay the taxes. In such case, that turnover will be included because that's your outward supply. Right. So this is from the purpose of how you are even computing turnover. But now assume that, okay, you know that this e-invoicing is applicable to you because your turnover exceeded this limit, though there are certain exception to that, right? So if we just talk about exception, it's a GTA or a passenger transport service, if you're an SEZ unit. So these are exception to that, where this e-invoicing is not applicable irrespective of the turnover. But now once you know this, right, Another question which I could keep actually seeing in the chat box also, that people ask like, okay, I know that this I my turnover exceeded this limit. What next? So when the next point comes over here is that you have to generate this iron only against your B2B and the export document. What does that mean? Because see, today you would be raising the invoice to a registered person, you would be raising invoice to an unregistered person, right? It's a B2C or a B2C large and all such kind of document. But when it comes to the iron generation, you are required to generate the iron only against the B2B and the export document. These are the two important documents against you are going to generate the iron number or the credit or debit note against these documents. So let's say if you have supplied to a registered person and later you also issued a credit note, then you have to generate the iron for the same also, right? So this was about against which kind of documents you are required to generate iron number. So which means you don't have to generate the iron in case of a B2C document. You don't have to generate the iron against bill of supply, because there is another question where people were asking, okay, I am just doing exempt supply, do I have to get or generate a iron number? The answer is, whenever you are doing a exempt supply, you raise a bill of supply, and when you raise a bill of supply, you are not required to generate the iron against the bill of supply. Similarly, there is another question where I could see the people was they were asking like, okay, I'm just transferring goods from my one branch to another within the same state. Right. So whenever you're transferring goods from one branch to another branch within the same state where you have a single GSTN, right? There you always issue a delivery challan. So again, the iron is not required against the delivery challan. Is only required in respect of the tax invoice, which is a B2B invoice or an export invoice. There you are, or maybe a corresponding credit debit note. So there you're required to create the iron number. You're not required to create the iron against the delivery challan. So hope this may clarify some of your doubt, because I could see that this was the same questions by the different people. So this is about the applicability part, but because we also understood about the issues and challenges. So maybe there is also one question I would like to understand from Shifali ji, like what happened, and I think she has already answered this also, but still I could see people are asking the same question again and again. So I would just request Shefali ji if she can just answer this again. So what happens if e-invoices are not generated?
Uh, First thing, there is a breach of provision, general provision, that was issuance of invoice, right? Now there can be some different consequences from the buyer's point of view. Their credit can be on hold. If I see the worst case scenario, now it will depend because there is no direct penalty associated to it, to the non-generation of e-invoicing, right? There is no direct penalty or direct consequences connected to this or attached to this by the law itself. So what we can see the impact of it or the general impact of it or the general provisions. So there can be penalty, right? Then there can be another thing. They can say that the input tax credit which is taken by your buyer is not correct credit, and till the time you generated e-invoicing, and let us take an example like for the month of April. So you raise the e-invoicing of April month in say August. So now department can ask your buyers that the complete invoice of this particular thing was raised in August, because earlier there was only a paper document or electronic document, but e-invoicing was not done. So the input tax credit which you have claimed in April, it is actually a wrong availment or wrong utilization. So from that period to this period, actually you must be liable to pay the interest. So this is just an imagination, like what can happen, what can be the consequences. On the part of supplier, say the correct sales, so you are not raising the invoices. Now for the journal penalty, there can be another question that the journal penalty will be for each invoice, the delay in each invoice, or it will be monthly, or it will be cumulative for the entire period. That is another, I will say, it's a disputed question because the provision talks only about the general penalty, that there can be a general penalty for the breach. So when I say breach, so breach is taken as an individual component of something, or it should be taken for the entire period, and it will completely depend on the officer with whom you are dealing. It will be his opinion. So if he will say that okay, it will be for the each and every breach, the amount can be really huge. Right? If you will say that no, it is for the period. So now this is something litigative, and you will have your own points when you will drafting the reply of these kind of things, or you will be going to the appeal for this kind of issue. and then there will be one point of view that will be from the side of department. So there can be these kind of consequences. So if you're not raising the invoice, also if your goods in the movement, the officer can detain them. And as we know that there is a provision that the driver, he should have the proper documents, like holding the documents when goods in the transit. So now for those documents there should be an invoice and there should be an e-way. They don't need to be in the hard copy, they can be in the soft copy. But when you are not raising the e-invoice, what will happen? The goods can be detained and you will be liable for the penalty under section 129 and 130. That section can also come into the picture. Now it will be very easy for the officers to do it. Why? Because they have the information of e-way bills which are raised on the e-way bill portal, right? Then you all understand that now we have GPS tracking in the trucks. So for any particular area, if the officer wants, he will be able to see all of the trucks because vehicle detail is also there. So he will be able to trace all the trucks which should be moving from that particular area, and through GPS tracking, they will be able to understand that okay, these particular vehicles are moving into this direction. So what they will do, they will just check the e-way bills for the particular area. Then they will, through that e-way bill, they will trace out the vehicle numbers. They will check the GPS location of all of those vehicle numbers. So when they understand that okay, these vehicles are on this particular toll or checkpost or wherever, like at their location where they are standing, they can directly go and check if the e-invoicing is done for those particular vehicles or not. So it will be very easy for them to detain all of those vehicles if they just use, very little of their mind, just use the technology. So it will be very easy for them, to detain each and every vehicle which is running without an e-invoice. So that will be the biggest consequence, because in this case you are liable for the 129 amount, like 200% of the tax amount on those particular goods. And under 130 there can be like seizure of goods can also be there. Under section 130 there will be like even more fatal consequences if they want to do it, because if the goods are moving and e-invoice is not raised, we can directly say that it is done from the intention to evade tax. So we all understand section 130 comes into picture when there is an intention to evade tax. So if I want to make a prima facie case, I can say that you are having an e-way bill but you don't have an e-invoice. It means there was an intention to evade tax. You just wanted your goods to move without an invoice. So there can be so many consequences. Like these are 3 or 4 common consequences for that.
Thank you, Shefali ji. So I know that there are a lot of queries which is coming up, but before that, I would just like to introduce Vinay. So Vinay, if you can just join us and give a small demo for our Clear product, I think that will be great because there are people who are asking about if we can get a demo, or maybe if you can just tell us like what are the fees which are required for the purpose of generation of iron. I think that will be great. Vinay, seems you're on mute, I guess. I don't know. We are not able to hear you, but we can see your screen. No, you are not audible.
Are you able to hear me?
Yeah, yeah, we can hear you now.
Okay, great. So yeah, yeah, you can see my screen also, no?
Yeah, we can see your screen.
Okay. So yeah, coming to the clear e-invoicing and e-waybill product, this is the home page. This is the landing page once I log in. So this is like it gives me the most important details. That is the number of invoices that have failed. What was the worth of that now? Which business am I looking at? How many documents are not generated? And what were the recent files that were uploaded? And I can access some quick things like MIS dashboard reconciliation and the guides and tally connector. So yeah, this is the home page. Then we have a lot of options on the left, that is documents, upload, e-bills, import history, reports, reconciliation settings and archives. So I'll just go take you through the main ones. Documents is where e-invoicing and like the most concentration of this particular session is on e-invoicing. So documents is where we have it. This is the list of invoices. So like you can see the document and the its status, the e-bill number and e-bill status, the date, IRN generation, who was the customer, what is the supply type, and IRN if it is present, and the invoice value. So these are some things that are displayed here, and we have filters on the left, like document date, then IRN generation, selection of business. Like if I want to switch between PANs or GSTINs or branches, I can have multiple branches inside the same thing. So that document numbers, then customer name, I can search by that. Then different statuses, then supply types, that is B2B, SEZ. We can also generate B2C QR codes, which we'll come to later. But yeah, exports and deemed exports. So with and without payment is inclusive here. And we can generate, invoices, credit notes, and debit notes. So yeah, this is the whole set of things. Now, when it comes to mandatory fields and what kind of information are required, uh, like invoice mainly, invoice expectation is that the document summary or the document details are the most fundamental. So the document type, which is the invoice, the document number, the document date, all these are mandatory fields. Like these are the ones from the document section. These are all returned to us by the government. That is IRN number and all this. Seller GSTN is our input, which is again mandatory. And yeah, QR code, acknowledgement number, IRN generation date, all these are given by the government portal. Now, these are transaction details, which is the supply type and other details. This is mandatory supply type. In seller details, the whole section becomes mandatory except the address line, to phone and email. So legal name, address line one, location, pin code, state code, all these details are required. Then buyer details are another section that is important, which is on the buyer GSTIN, the legal name, place of supply, and all these information. This is again mandatory. Then coming to the value details, which is on the tax rates and tax values. The tax value, which is taxable value, is important, and the total invoice value. So the other things, the GST rate and all that, those GST rate can be provided and the tax and invoice value can be calculated. So like government wants this, but we actually calculate it. So you can choose that method. Shipping and dispatch details are optional. You can choose to provide it. Line item level details are very important. What's the HSN that you are going for? Is it a goods or a service type, and the product serial number? So which line item is this? Along with this, actually I need to give the gross amount, the taxable value, and the GST rate at a line item level, so that at an invoice level these information can be calculated. So yeah, these there are multiple other information that you can give, but yeah, these are the mandatory ones. Then export details, if it is there, the shipping bill, shipping port code, shipping bill number, and shipping bill date. And lastly, additional supporting documents and e-bill details. So this is transportation details. So you can, as a supplier, create only part A, where it is transporter ID, and distance can be given. Actually, transporter ID is also optional. Distance is mandatory. And you can create a part A, or you can give the full section if you're aware of the details and create a part B e-bill. So yeah, this is the invoice level details, and I'll show you the e-bill e-invoice template also. So yeah, the mandatory fields are all highlighted in red, and there are a lot of fields, but you can choose just to give the ones that are relevant to you. So there are about 130 fields, but you can only give the required and mandatory fields and let ClearTax and government handle the rest. Like ClearTax can auto calculate a lot of fields, and government can also give you things like distance and all that. So this is how the file looks like, and uploading documents is quite simple on Clear. So you can just choose the file, that is upload documents, then click on select a file to upload, and just select a file from your computer. It will start uploading. So I had 9 documents, out of which 2 had errors, and the error correction is also quite simple. They are highlighted in red, so you can just scroll right and see these errors. So I have GSTIN as something from Gujarat, but I've given the state as Maharashtra, so I can just give the state code, which is 24, and the pin code is wrong here, so I can just give the same pin code as above. And this is as simple, uh, importing or uploading document. And I have all the invoices that are not generated. Now I can also select, like creating invoices is also very simple. This is how you create invoices. Just select those invoices and click on generate. You will see a notification here that they are all in progress. It is in queue, and it got generated. Like 6 got generated, and out of this you can just click on print here. We have multiple templates available. You can select you can create your own custom template with some help, or you can use one of our templates. We have the NIC e-sign template also, so you can just generate a print preview and check all the details and download a PDF or give it for print, or you can also download from here. So yeah, this is on the e-invoice side of things, which is like this. So there are, we give a summary at the top, then you can cancel an invoice also from here. You just need to, select the invoice and click on cancel IRN. You need to just give the uh, like cancellation reason and remarks, and you can just go and cancel it. If you have an e-waybill also, that will also be cancelled. So it is just like this. And the other options that we have in upload, we just use the like government template, but you can also set up your own template, like from your ERP, directly export data and upload it here. You can create e-waybills using the IRN template or any documents, like IRN and non-IRN both. So hence the unified part of things. So like we just created these invoices. Now should I upload again? The answer is actually no. Those invoices are already available here and it is in pending state. So what I can do is I can just click on this, update the transportation details. Let's say I have the transporter available and handy. I can just use this and give road as the this thing, and transportation document number and all this. Let's say it is today's, and uh, regular, and yeah, I can just go for e-waybill generation. So this is an e-waybill that I just created, and again the details are available on the screen. Yeah, so this is all the details. Sorry for the interruption. So yeah, these are the details that are available on the screen, and for this thing, and you can take a print of this that is detailed. You can also go for a basic print, or even without the. So here you get the goods details. This is as close to the NIC print as uh, like this is exactly same as the NIC print, and the final thing is on the print details. So you can actually, without goods details, so you can reference the IRN details here. So yeah, so this is on the e-waybill part of it. And again, so the e-waybill that I created will be available on the e-invoice screen. So you can actually see the e-waybill number and the e-waybill status here. You can go for cancellation. So if you go for IRN cancellation, it will say that actually e-waybill is attached with it. So both will be cancelled in one go. So in one step, you can cancel both. Yeah, so when it comes to e-waybill, again, we have similar filters in terms of date, but you have more options. Like you can filter by e-waybills which have blank vehicle number. So you can select all of this and update transportation details or this thing in bulk. So this is possible, and you will get to know which one can be updated. Also, you can filter by where transporter ID is blank. So that filter is also available. Then you can go for something of this sort where e-waybills are expiring today, expiring tomorrow. So you can filter for those. Uh, Another thing that you can do is actually download data from NIC. So if you have created some e-waybills on the government portal, you can always select this option and download e-bills from the government portal. Just select the date range and go for download data from NIC. So once you click this, the data from government portal. So any person generating on any other portal you can download. Also, you can get to know the e-bills generated by third-party GSTN. That is anybody else who is generating on your behalf. You can get from here, and also as a transporter also you can. So this is all on the e-bill side of things, which I wanted to cover briefly. I mean, I just took some few things. So this is on the import history, where you can see all the files and things that you have uploaded in the recent time. So you can see that at the pan level we have uploaded so many files, and who is the person who is uploading it. Then there are reports that are available for e-invoicing, and you can see how many invoices are getting generated, what's the value of it, how many got cancelled and failed, and all this. So you can see these reports, and reconciliation is from our GST product, so you can use this option as well. And there are a lot of settings, like you can modify, you can invite more users, you can you can add more GSTINs and create a lot of other use cases that are possible from here. Archived is for downloading reports from a long period. So any data that you want, like let's say 3 months report or 6 months report, or even if you want a report from the older data, like you've created it on ClearTax, but it's more than 1 year old. So you can download it from the archive section. So yeah, these are the main features, or this is our invoice and e-bill part of it. Yeah, over to you, Surbi.
Thank you, Vinay, for taking the demo and also like showing them what are the mandatory and the optional fees, because that was one of the query I could see on the chat box also. And there are other queries also, but I think most of our queries are we have tried to put on the chat box. So I tried to reply it on the chat box itself, and we have also taken a lot of queries along with Shefali ji. So with this, I would like to thanks Vinay for taking the demo, and Shefali for even taking out her time and telling about the applicability of invoicing, telling about the business impact on the invoicing, and not only that, though she also tried to answer all of your queries which was asked by different viewers. So thank you for joining, and thanks Shefali for taking the session. Thank you very
I
much.
think there is something on fees. So you can get in touch with our team to actually understand what's the plan and what kind of subscription plans and fees are available. So, want to just